She was hired as a waitress for a party and unexpectedly sparked feelings in the powerful CEO. But after that night, she was left behind, humiliated and pregnant with 2 children. Stay until the end to find out the outcome of this emotional story. And before that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Seo Minji was a young woman from a humble background, living in a small apartment in Seoul and working tirelessly as a waitress in a cafe near the city's financial district. Determined and hardworking, she dreamed of opening her own business, but her reality was far from that. Surrounded by hardships, Minji stood out for her kindness and her ability to see the positive side, even in the toughest moments. She avoided getting close to the world of the rich, knowing that there was no room for someone like her there. Jin Seon-woo, on the other hand, lived a completely different life. A CEO of Jin Group, one of the country's largest corporations, he was known for his coldness, his arrogance, and his relentless dedication to work. His motto was simple: feelings are weaknesses. Seon-woo didn't allow distractions or emotional ties that could interfere with his relentless pursuit of success. To him, people were merely tools for reaching goals, and he made sure to keep his distance, always being direct and unyielding with everyone around him. Fate, however, decided to cross Seon-woo and Minji's paths on an unexpected night. That night, Minji was working as a waitress at a luxury event hosted by Jin Group, held at a 5-star hotel. Dressed in the event's uniform and surrounded by powerful people, Minji tried her best to maintain her posture, though she felt completely out of place in that environment. Needing the money, she endured the long hours and the exhaustion, trying to remain unnoticed among all the richly dressed men and women. At one of the tables, seated with a glass of whiskey, was Seon-woo. He observed the environment with his usual indifferent gaze, but he was more tired than usual after a series of investor conflicts. He had drunk more than usual and was particularly annoyed with how things were going. It was then that Minji, unaware of who he was, approached to offer him a refill, smiling politely. "Sir, would you like another drink?" she asked without looking him directly in the eyes. Seon-woo, accustomed to being flattered and treated with extreme reverence, noticed something different in her manner. Minji was polite, but there was a simplicity and honesty in how she treated him that intrigued him. He looked up and stared directly at her, expecting her to look away, but to his surprise, Minji held his gaze. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, with a challenging tone. Minji hesitated for a moment but replied with a friendly smile. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm not one to keep up with the business world." This comment brought a faint chuckle from Seon-woo, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Her frankness disarmed him, and he decided to continue the conversation, which was unusual for him. "You're the first person here who's talked to me without any flattery," he commented. "Do you think I don't have a remarkable face?" She laughed, surprised by the question. "Perhaps a little remarkable, yes, but I only see people like you every so often, so I don't really pay much attention." Minji noticed Seon-woo's light expression, and for a moment she forgot that he was an important, powerful guest. They continued talking briefly while Minji served his drink. Seon-woo's casual tone surprised her, as she had never imagined that someone of his stature could be even a bit pleasant. But soon, the lighthearted conversation began to take another direction. Seon-woo, slightly influenced by the alcohol, started to speak with a shadowy sincerity, complaining about the constant pressure and the loneliness of being the leader of such a major company. Minji, moved by the unexpected vulnerability he showed, felt a strange desire to comfort him. At the end of the night, after a few more drinks and laughs, Seon-woo impulsively invited Minji to join him on the hotel's balcony, where the view of the illuminated city was breathtaking. Minji hesitated, but, swept up by the moment and the kindness he had shown, she decided to accept. There, on the balcony, the two found themselves in an even more intimate atmosphere. He looked into her eyes and, without thinking, took her hand. The gesture caught her by surprise, but she didn't pull back. "You're different," he said softly, his gaze fixed on her eyes. Minji felt her heart race, and before she could respond, Seon-woo pulled her closer, sealing the moment with an unexpected kiss. It was an intense moment, unexpected for both of them. Seon-woo, a man used to having absolute control over his emotions, felt vulnerable and confused. Minji, on the other hand, was swept away by the moment, never imagining that this powerful man could show such a tender side. The next morning, everything changed. Seonwoo woke up cold and distant, as if the man from the previous night had disappeared. Without a proper goodbye, he left Minji in the hotel room, saying very little and using a detached tone. Minji, still processing the events of the night, felt betrayed and used, but she said goodbye in silence, trying to convince herself that it was all just an illusion. A few weeks passed, and Minji, determined to move on, focused on her work and tried not to think about that night. However, she began experiencing frequent nausea and unusual fatigue. After an examination, the devastating truth came to light. Minji was pregnant, and not just with one baby, but with twins. The news shook her deeply. She didn't know how to deal with the idea of raising two children on her own. Her fears grew as she thought about the possibility of telling Seonwoo. The memory of the coldness with which he treated her after that night was enough to convince her that he would never accept the idea of having children with someone of her status. In addition, he would likely despise her even more, thinking that she was after his fortune. Determined to protect her children, Minji made the choice to move forward on her own. She left the cafe where she worked, moved to a more remote neighborhood, and started working multiple jobs to support her pregnancy. Over time, she accepted that her children would grow up without a father, but she promised herself that she would do everything possible to create a safe and loving home for them. Months later, Seo-jun and Seo-jin were born, and Minji found in them a new reason to live. The challenges were many, but the love she felt for her children was enough to give her strength. She promised herself that she would do anything to protect them and that she would never allow Seonwoo to discover them or treat them with the same disdain he once showed her. 5 years had passed since that night and since Minji's decision to raise the twins on her own. Seo-jun and Seo-jin were now two lively, smart, and charismatic children, full of energy. Minji had managed to establish a stable routine with them in a modest neighborhood in Seoul, where they lived surrounded by caring neighbors who helped whenever they could. Despite the hardships, Minji managed to meet all her children's needs with her job at a small flower shop, and Seo-jun and Seo-jin were her source of joy and motivation. Meanwhile, Jin Seonwoo's life remained the same. He was still the ruthless CEO of Jin Group, with an even colder and more implacable reputation. Devoting himself to work had become a way to fill the loneliness and lack of meaning he secretly felt but would never admit to anyone. However, an unexpected event brought Seonwoo to Minji's neighborhood. Jin Group was planning to expand its business and open a luxury branch in a more accessible residential area, aiming to strengthen the company's image as an inclusive brand. For this reason, Seonwoo decided to personally visit the area to inspect the progress of the project. Little did he know that fate was leading him directly to an encounter with a person and a secret he could never have expected. That same day, Minji was taking Seo-jun and Seo-jin to the neighborhood park, enjoying the morning sun as they played and relaxed. The children were excited, running around and laughing, and Minji felt at peace seeing them so happy. She never allowed anything to interfere with these precious moments with her children. As she watched her sons, Minji was startled by the sound of expensive car engines arriving nearby. Several black cars pulled up next to the park, and men in suits got out. Minji looked over quickly, feeling worried until her gaze landed on a figure she never thought she would see there. Jin Seonwoo. Minji felt her heart race. Years had passed, but his face, even with the usual serious expression, was unmistakable. She froze for a moment until she noticed Seo-jun and Seo-jin running in the opposite direction, playing hide-and-seek among the bushes. Seeing that Seonwoo was heading toward the area where her children were playing, Minji felt a surge of panic. She hurried in the boys' direction, but before she could reach them, Seo-jin, the more curious of the twins, bumped into Seonwoo. Seonwoo looked down, meeting the gaze of the bright-eyed child looking up at him. The resemblance between them was striking, though Seonwoo didn't realize it immediately. He looked at the boy with curiosity, thinking about how bold the child was to look him in the eyes so directly. "Are you the boss here?" Seo-jin asked with a smile, still holding a leaf he had picked up from the ground and extending it as a gift. Seonwoo raised an eyebrow, surprised by the boy's spontaneity. "The boss, you could say that. What are you doing here on your own?" he asked, with a tone gentler than usual. Before Seo-jin could respond, Seo-jun arrived, calling his brother. "Seo-jin, Mom's going to worry." At that moment, Seonwoo looked at the two boys together and noticed the resemblance between them. the color of their eyes, their mischievous expressions, even some of their facial features. It was as if he were looking at miniature versions of himself. This left him uneasy. He blinked a few times, trying to shake off the thought, convinced he was imagining things. After all, the idea of being the father of 2 children was absurd to him. Just then, Minji arrived breathless, and upon seeing Seonwoo talking to her children, felt a chill. She called them back quickly. "Seojun, Seojin, come here," she said, trying to stay calm. The boys, noticing their mother's anxious expression, obeyed immediately. Minji gave Seonwoo a quick look, trying to gauge if he had noticed anything. He looked back at her, and for a brief second, their eyes met. Seonwoo was surprised to recognize Minji. He hadn't expected to see her after so long, much less in that way, surrounded by 2 children who inexplicably reminded him of himself. "Minji?" he murmured, almost in shock. He hadn't anticipated ever seeing her again, and certainly not like this, with 2 children who looked oddly familiar. Minji, visibly uncomfortable, looked away and forced a smile. "Mr. Jin, what a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here." She held her children's hands tightly, feeling threatened and trying to keep them by her side. Seonwoo looked at her with suspicion. These boys are your children?" He glanced back and forth between them, the doubt making him frown. Something didn't seem right, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what was bothering him. "Yes," she answered quickly, trying to sound natural. "They're my children. Life has changed a lot since we last saw each other." He nodded but continued to observe the twins. Something intrigued him deeply. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was a connection between him and those children. Nevertheless, he chose to leave it alone, feeling foolish for considering something so improbable. Seeing that he was still looking at the boys, Minji quickly pulled the children along and said goodbye. "Well, it was nice seeing you, but we have to go now." "Wait," he called before she could leave. "Don't you want to talk about life? After all, it seems we have a past in common." She froze but kept her composure. "I don't think we have much to talk about, Mr. Jin. I'm just here taking care of my kids, that's all." Before he could respond, Minji quickly left with Seojun and Seojin. As she walked away, her heart raced, and her mind was flooded with memories of the past and apprehension. She couldn't let Seonwoo find out the truth, or he might try to take the children away from her. With this in mind, she knew she would have to take precautions and avoid crossing paths with Seonwoo again. As they walked away, Seonwoo stood there, watching them disappear around the corner. An unsettling and persistent doubt grew in his mind, and he felt tempted to investigate further. Seonwoo couldn't forget the encounter he'd had with Minji and her 2 children. No matter how much he tried to focus on work, the image of the boys kept surfacing in his thoughts. There was something about them that left him restless, an almost uncomfortable sense of familiarity that he couldn't explain. He was not a man who believed in coincidences, and deep down, he felt that these boys might be more than just the children of an old acquaintance. His curiosity soon turned into determination. At his office, he called his trusted assistant, Park Sung-ho, and asked him to investigate Minji discreetly. Sung-ho knew his boss rarely took an interest in personal matters, which left him intrigued. However, he simply agreed and began the investigation. Meanwhile, Minji tried to go about her routine as usual, but the encounter with Seonwoo had made her anxious. She knew he was not the kind of man to ignore suspicions, and she feared he might discover the truth about the boys. Every time she took the twins to school or went to the market, she glanced over her shoulder, afraid of running into Seonwoo or someone sent by him. The nights became more difficult, and she started sleeping less, worried about what she would do if he demanded some form of rights over the children. A few days later, Seonwoo began appearing more frequently in Minji's neighborhood, using the pretext of supervising the construction of Jin Group's new branch. He made sure to be present at times when he knew he might accidentally run into her, and soon began to see her in places like the market and the children's school. Each time he saw her, he would attempt a subtle approach. One morning, he found her at the local market buying fruit for the twins. He walked over, pretending to be surprised. "Minji, what a coincidence seeing you here again," he said, his expression almost casual. She turned around, trying not to show her discomfort. "Mr. Jin, it seems you're always around here lately," she replied, keeping her tone guarded. "Well, my company is expanding, and I want to make sure everything is going as planned," he replied, still keeping a light tone. But I must admit, running into you and your kids was a pleasant surprise. He hesitated a little before adding, they're adorable. How old are they? Minji felt a chill down her spine at the question. She forced a smile, keeping calm. 5 years old. They keep me busy all the time, she said, laughing nervously. Xianwu watched her closely, noticing her tense smile and the nervousness in her eyes. She seemed to be hiding something, which only deepened his suspicions. But he simply nodded and changed the subject, allowing her space to walk away without pushing further. However, the more he observed Minji, the more his curiosity turned into conviction. The resemblance between the boys and himself, their age, Minji's discomfort when talking about them. All of this led him to believe that something much bigger was being hidden. He decided that if she wouldn't speak willingly, he would find answers himself. A few days later, Park Sung-ho returned with the information Xianwu had requested. He had found out that Minji was a single mother who worked hard to support her children. There were no records of a partner involved in her life, making it clear that Minji had raised the children alone since their birth. However, what caught Xianwu's attention the most was the fact that Minji didn't seem to have any known relatives and lived quite isolated, as if she avoided close contact with others. Xianwu began to piece things together and understand the situation, but he needed definitive confirmation. Determined, he asked Sung-ho to arrange a formal visit with Minji, claiming that he wanted to discuss a community support project his company was launching in the neighborhood. This would give him an excuse to see her directly and confront her about what he suspected. On the scheduled day, Xianwu arrived at Minji's apartment. She was surprised and uncomfortable with the unexpected visit, but received him cautiously. The boys were at school and she was home alone. Upon opening the door, she saw the serious expression on Xianwu's face and knew that he wasn't there for business. Mr. Jin, what brings you to my home? I didn't think the community project included visiting residents, she said, trying to keep her tone formal. He looked at her intently, not mincing words. Minji, I know there's something you're not telling me. Can we stop pretending and have an honest conversation? She felt her face pale and tried to hide it. I don't know what you're talking about. If it's about the project, perhaps I can help in another way. Xianwu took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. Those children, Seo-jun and Seo-jin, they're my sons, aren't they? Minji swallowed hard, and for a moment the world seemed to stop around her. She had never imagined he would confront her directly. She felt tears welling up in her eyes, but held back, trying not to lose her composure. With a trembling voice, she replied, Mr. Jin, I've raised the children alone since they were born. I would never ask anything of you. Xianwu didn't look away. That doesn't answer my question, Minji. Are they my children? Minji hesitated, realizing there was no more room to evade. Yes, she finally admitted, her voice filled with pain and fear. They are your children, Xianwu, but I didn't want you to know. I thought they would be better off without you. His face tightened with shock and anger. Without me? You made that decision for me? How could you hide something like this? She raised her head, maintaining her dignity despite the pain. I remember very well how you treated me that morning, Xianwu. You made it clear that I meant nothing to you. I didn't want my children to face the humiliation of being rejected by their own father. Her words hit him like a punch. Xianwu felt a mixture of anger and regret. He remembered that morning and how coldly he'd treated her, but he had never imagined it would have such deep consequences. He tried to find words, but all he could feel was a whirlwind of emotions. Minji, you didn't have the right to decide that alone, he said, his tone softer now, almost broken. They're my children too. I have the right to be in their lives. She looked at him, her eyes firm and filled with resentment. A right? After everything that happened, you still think you have the right to demand anything? He felt the pain in her words, but he didn't know how to respond. For the first time, Xianwu, the powerful CEO, was at a loss. All he knew was that he wanted, more than anything, to be part of those boys' lives, even if he didn't know how. Minji, exhausted from fighting alone, sighed deeply. If you truly care about them, you'll have to prove it to me. Prove that they mean more to you than just a simple right. Xianwu nodded, understanding the barrier between them. He knew this battle was only beginning, but for the first time, he was determined to fight. Not for a company, but for something he had never imagined wanting: a family. After the confrontation at her home, Seo Min-ji was shaken. Seeing Seon-woo finally discover that he was the father of her twins made her realize that her life would never be the same. Even after everything he had put her through, there was still a deep fear within her, an uncertainty about whether he would truly accept the children with his whole heart. She knew that now, Seon-woo wouldn't rest until he became part of the boys' lives, and that idea terrified her. Meanwhile, Seon-woo was also caught up in a whirlwind of emotions. It was difficult for him to accept that he had missed 5 years of his children's lives, all because of a decision made by Min-ji. The anger and resentment he felt toward her did not fade easily, but he knew that if he wanted a relationship with Seo-jun and Seo-jin, he would have to control his emotions and make a real effort to earn Min-ji's trust, and above all, the boys' trust. In the days that followed, Seon-woo decided to get closer to the children. He was determined to do things the right way, so he began with cautious steps. One afternoon, he showed up unexpectedly at the boys' school, hoping that Min-ji would be there too. When she saw him, Min-ji tried to ignore him, but she quickly realized it would be impossible to prevent him from approaching the children. When Seo-jun and Seo-jin saw Seon-woo, their faces lit up. They remembered him as the fancy uncle from the park and were excited to see him again. "Uncle, did you come to see us again?" asked Seo-jin, the more outgoing of the two, with a charming smile. Seon-woo smiled at the boy, trying not to show the mix of nervousness and excitement he was feeling. "Yes, I came to see you," he said, trying to keep the emotion out of his voice. "Are you going home now? Can I walk with you?" Min-ji hesitated, but she didn't want to create a scene in front of the children. Reluctantly, she nodded, and the three of them started heading toward her apartment. During the walk, Seon-woo spoke with the boys, asking them about their hobbies and the things they liked. It was strange for him, but surprisingly, it also felt natural. He had never imagined himself as a father, but the twins awakened something new and even comforting within him. Seo-jun, more reserved, held his mother's hand while discreetly observing the uncle with curiosity. Meanwhile, Seo-jin, full of questions, kept up a steady conversation. "Uncle, do you like soccer?" "June and I play every day after school." Seon-woo gave a small smile, trying to look relaxed. "I was never very good at sports, but maybe I can watch you play one of these days." Min-ji, who had been silent until then, interrupted. "I think we can go the rest of the way by ourselves," she said, trying to cut off the bond he was creating with the boys. She wanted to avoid the children becoming attached to him without knowing where this was headed. Seon-woo looked at her with determination, but his tone remained gentle. "Min-ji, I just want to spend time with them. They have the right to know me." Min-ji looked at him, breathing deeply to keep her nerves in check. "It's very easy for you to say that now. After 5 years, isn't it?" Her voice was low but tense. "For me, those 5 years were the hardest of my life." Seon-woo saw the pain in her expression but didn't know how to respond. He knew there was no justification for what Min-ji had faced alone. So he chose to step back, realizing that pushing further would only create more tension. He said goodbye to the boys with a slight smile and promised to visit them again soon, leaving Min-ji alone for now but determined to return. In the days that followed, Seon-woo didn't give up. He began sending gifts to Seo-jun and Seo-jin, toys and clothes he thought would please them. Min-ji, irritated, sent everything back, feeling that Seon-woo was trying to buy the boys' affection. However, one day, Seo-jin begged to keep a toy car that he fell in love with at first sight, and Min-ji, after much reluctance, allowed it. She realized that the children were growing attached to Seon-woo, and this made her uneasy. One rainy afternoon, Seon-woo decided to make an unexpected visit to Min-ji's apartment. She opened the door, surprised and annoyed by his unexpected appearance. "What do you want now, Seon-woo?" she asked, her gaze steady. "I thought we had made it clear how things would be." He took a deep breath, facing her. "Min-ji, I know you've been through a lot, and I know I wasn't fair to you, but I want to be a father to them. I want to be present and do things right. I know it seems late, but even so, I'm here." Minji closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back tears. She wanted to believe him, but her fear of him hurting the boys was stronger than any desire to give him a chance. Seonwoo, being a father isn't a right. It's a responsibility. I can't let you into their lives just because you've now decided you want it. Seonwoo looked at her, trying to absorb what she was saying. He understood her perspective, but he was determined to prove that he was capable of being the father they deserved. Then tell me what I need to do, he asked, his voice carrying rare sincerity. I want to prove that I mean it. Minji hesitated, surprised by his openness. After a moment of silence, she responded, her voice trembling. If you want to prove something, do it slowly. Don't promise them anything you can't keep. They've already lost too much. From that day on, Seonwoo began visiting Seo-jun and Seo-jin more regularly, respecting the boundaries Minji had set. He would take them to the park, watch their soccer games, and even learn to laugh at the boys' mischievous antics, something he never thought he'd do. Slowly, he felt a change within himself, a feeling of fulfillment that he had never known before. One day, while they were playing in the park, Seo-jun, the more introspective of the twins, came up to Seon-woo and asked him a question that caught him off guard. Uncle, why do you like us so much? There are so many other boys out there. Why do you always come to see us? Seon-woo looked at the boy, feeling his heart tighten. He knew that sooner or later he would have to tell his sons the truth. So he knelt down to be at Seo-jun's eye level and replied sincerely. Because you're very special to me, Seo-jun. I don't think I even know exactly why, but I feel that I want to be with you all the time. I want you to get to know me for who I really am. Seo-jun smiled, satisfied with the answer, while Seo-jin, who had overheard the conversation, ran over to hug Seon-woo. Minji, watching from a distance, felt her heart ache as she witnessed the scene. She knew it was inevitable. Seon-woo was becoming a part of the boys' lives, and the more attached they became to him, the harder it would be to separate them. After a few weeks of spending time together, Minji realized that Seon-woo had become a constant presence. Despite her concerns, she started to notice that he was genuinely trying to be a good father. The determination and patience he showed were gradually breaking down her walls. She saw how he genuinely smiled around the boys, and against her will, she began to open up to the possibility of allowing Seon-woo into their lives. One weekend, Seon-woo invited the three of them for a trip to a farm outside the city. Hesitantly, Minji agreed. It was a special day for everyone. The boys had fun, and Minji, for the first time in years, allowed herself to relax. As the sun began to set, Seon-woo and Minji found themselves alone while the children played in the field. Thank you for today, she said with a small smile. I never imagined that we'd be here together like this. He looked at her sincerely and for the first time confessed, Minji, I've made many mistakes, but I want to prove to you that I can be part of your lives. Not just the boys' lives, but yours too. Minji looked down, touched but cautious. She wanted to believe him, but she knew that only time and his actions could give her that reassurance. Yet, in that moment, a small hope began to grow in her heart. In the months that followed, the bond between Seon-woo and the twins grew stronger. He maintained a constant presence and genuinely involved himself in the boys' lives, exactly as he had promised Minji. Slowly, her mistrust began to fade, and she started to see someone different in him, someone far from the cold CEO she had known years ago. He was truly trying, and to Minji's surprise, he was actually doing well as a father. Seo-jun and Seo-jin looked forward to Seon-woo's visits, and this filled Minji's heart with conflicting feelings. She feared that any misstep on Seon-woo's part might hurt the children, but his efforts to earn the trust of both the boys and her were becoming undeniable. In small gestures and the promises he kept, Seon-woo was showing a genuine change. One rainy night, while waiting for the storm to pass, Seon-woo decided to surprise the twins. He appeared at Minji's door, carrying a huge dinosaur puzzle, knowing that the boys would love putting it together. When Minji saw him soaked and trying to balance the box of toys, she couldn't help but smile. What are you doing here in the middle of this rain? She asked, somewhat surprised by his dedication. I promised the boys I'd come today, and when you make a promise to kids, you have to keep it, right? He smiled back, trying to ignore the cold he felt. I thought this might make their evening a bit more fun. Minji stepped aside to let him in, and the boys lit up with excitement at the surprise. They spent the night putting the puzzle together and laughing, just like a family. As Minji watched Seo-jun and Seo-jin's happiness, she felt warmth in her heart and a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in a long time. After putting the boys to bed, she went to the kitchen, where Seon-woo was preparing 2 cups of tea. Minji's eyes were filled with gratitude, but also insecurity. Knowing the moment was delicate, Seon-woo spoke first. "Minji, I know it's probably too late to say this, but I'm sorry," he began, his voice low and sincere. "I'm sorry for the way I treated you in the past. And most of all, I'm sorry for not being there during these 5 years. Nothing will change what you went through alone, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes so that you and the boys never have to face anything alone again." His words reached deep into her heart. Minji felt her eyes fill with tears and looked away for a moment, taking in what he had said. Seeing Seon-woo so vulnerable and honest was something she had never imagined. She took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Seon-woo, it wasn't easy for me. For a long time I was angry with you, and I thought I'd never be able to forgive, but I've seen you change. And maybe I'm ready to let the past go," she replied, with a shy but sincere smile. Seon-woo nodded, feeling the weight of her approval. It was more than he had expected. He took Minji's hand and they remained silent, as if those words and gestures were enough to seal the beginning of a new chapter. In the months that followed, Seon-woo became a constant presence in Minji and the boys' lives. He participated in school events, park outings, and even helped with household chores. The children adored their new dad, and with each passing day, Seon-woo grew more comfortable in his role as a father. He made sure to include Minji and the boys in his life, sharing special moments and planning family activities. Over time, the staff at Jin Group noticed the change in Seon-woo's behavior. He had become a more understanding and less rigid boss, someone who now devoted part of his time to his children and the woman he clearly loved. This new side of him puzzled his employees, but everyone was impressed with his transformation. One day, while they were together at a picnic in the park, Seo-jun tugged on Seon-woo's hand and said, with a shy smile, "Dad, you're not going to leave again, are you?" Seon-woo, touched by the question, knelt down to be at eye level with his son and answered firmly, "No, Jun, I'm never leaving you again. I promise." The promise was spoken with such sincerity that Minji, who was watching, felt a tear slip down her cheek. She knew that everything was finally all right. For the first time, she felt that her family was complete. A few months later, Seon-woo organized a small family celebration for the twins' birthday. He wanted the event to be special and decided to do something that would symbolize their union. After singing Happy Birthday as Seo-jun and Seo-jin were having fun with their friends, he gently pulled Minji aside. "Minji, there's something I want to say to you," he began, visibly nervous, which was rare for him. "Since the moment I found out I had a family, my life has taken on a new meaning. You're all everything to me now." She looked at him with a smile, not entirely sure what he was planning, but allowing herself to be carried by the emotion of the moment. "I thought I would never need anyone, but now I know that I'm only truly complete by your side," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "Minji, will you marry me? Will you officially become my wife and let me be a real father to our boys?" Her heart raced, overwhelmed with joy to the point that she could barely speak. With tears of happiness, she nodded, and they embraced, sealing the commitment they both felt in their hearts. The morning after the wedding, Minji, Seon-woo, Seo-jun, and Seo-jin gathered for a simple but joyful breakfast. They laughed and told stories, enjoying each moment together. For the twins, life could not have been happier. They finally had a complete family. And Seon-woo? He had found something he never imagined possible. His heart, once hardened and cold, had finally discovered the warmth of true love. He was no longer just the rigid, ruthless CEO. Now, he was a husband, a father, and a man who understood the value of the people he loved. As he watched Minji and the boys laugh, he felt a peace he had never known before. This family, which he had almost lost due to his pride, was now his purpose in life, and he promised himself that he would always protect the happiness of his new family. Thank you for watching until the end and following every detail of this story full of emotion, secrets, and unexpected reunions. And now, we want to know, what would you do in the place of this young mother who raised her children alone without anyone's support? Would you give your children's father another chance or move on? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your opinion. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to receive more engaging stories like this one. See you in the next video.